Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Former Athlete Society. And this is another question and answer call session that we hold on the community all the time. Now, whether you're joining this live or you're catching this on the YouTube replay, I'm just stoked that you're here, that you're investing in yourself, that you're following along on the Q&A calls. Because quite frankly, listen, if somebody else in the community has this question, there is a great chance that you might also have it as well. So that said, I'm going to jump into about 5 real solid questions that our community members have emailed in. They ended up sending it to me. You can do that at YouTube at adamringler.com. You can send me the questions there. Get those questions to me. And then if you are a society member, I invite you all the time to join in the link to actually attend these live Q&As live in person. So you can jump ahead of all the email questions, all the social media questions, all of this, and jump right into it and ask your questions to me, a strength coach. Now, that said, who is this? Who is the founder of the Former Athlete Society? Who am I? I've been a strength and conditioning coach for almost 20 years at this rate. So this is what I do. This is my livelihood, and this is what I've invested my entire life in it. So if you want your questions answered live in an expedient fashion, then go ahead, jump into this. I invite you. You have 24-hour, all 365-day access to all of our previous calls and all of our future calls as well. So this question that's coming up, it's from Jake, and he ended up asking, hey, Adam, I keep seeing all of these cold plunge videos everywhere. It's all over my Instagram. Some folks swear by them. Others think that they're overhyped. What is your take on cold plunges? Is it legit or is it just a trend? And Jake, this is a great question. And it's one that I've been getting so often, I have to address it, right? So let's talk about it. Cold exposure has been a hot topic, right? Hot and cold. The pun slightly intended. And for a while, right? And the conversation isn't new, but the popularity of it, of at-home plunges and ice barrels and things like that, has absolutely skyrocketed in the last few years. So I get the confusion around all of this. The visuals are intense, the vibe seems somewhat edgy, and former athletes like us, yeah, we're probably wired for that challenge, right? We want that sort of thrill of getting in something and pushing our bodies, right? We're built for discomfort. And so something like a cold plunge, yeah, that's going to speak highly to us, right? It's going to, we love these ideas of something that challenges us and makes it harder for us to endure, right? It shifts us into that athlete standpoint. But let's take off the hype hat, right? We'll remove that and break it down for us for a second, right? Now, the science, the physiology, maybe the practicality of the former athlete reality that we live in. So let's look at it, right? First, looking at the science. Cold plunge is technically referred to as deliberate cold exposure, right? We understand these things. Usually involves immersing the body in cold water. Now, often that's between 50 to 59 degrees Fahrenheit. And for a controlled period, say anywhere between 2 to 10 minutes, right? Depending on your tolerance. And what's happening, right, physiologically? Well, cold exposure triggers a huge cascade of central nervous system responses. So you immediately get vasoconstriction. That's when your blood vessels narrow and the blood flow redirects to the core to protect your vital organs. And your body kicks into this sort of survival mode. And that's when your breathing also spikes, right? Your heart rate jumps and that stress hormone rockets up in your body. Now, here's the magic part, though. After that initial sympathetic spike, what follows is this sort of beautiful parasympathetic rebound. You get a calming effect. Your breathing ends up slowing down and your mood stabilizes. You get a huge release of sort of hormones throughout our body, dopamine, neurotransmitters that all play a major role in mood and motivation and pain modulation. Oh my goodness, I can't even speak today, right? This is one of the reasons why people feel mentally sharp or emotionally clear after a cold plunge. It makes them feel great. And there's a kind of clarity that often shows up when you're 90 seconds into freezing water, let me tell you. And you're not distracted by anything else. The only concentration you have is on the water, your breath, and the cold. But let me be crystal clear, right? It's not magic. It's not, it's really sort of stress in our body. It's a short, sharp dose of discomfort that your body adapts to. And that is the key reality, and the key theme here is the adaptation. Former athletes are built on stress, adaptation, recovery, repeat. So cold plunges, yeah, they tap into that same framework. Now, I do want to talk about maybe the inflammation piece, right? And centered around maybe the recovery, right? And usually the second part of this question is what I'm going to tackle, right? Does cold plunging help with muscle soreness or recovery? And the answer is kind of, right? It's a little nuanced, right? And that's sport. We all understand that sport's nuanced. The traditional view is that cold plunges blunt inflammation. It reduces delayed onset muscle soreness, and it helps accelerate your recovery after hard training. And while that can be true in an acute sense, like after two-a-days or tournament weekends where inflammation control matters, the emerging science is like anything else. It's nuance. So if you're training for hypertrophy, we're actually trying to get strong and jacked and yoked, right? Long-term muscle adaptation. Plunging right after your lift can actually kind of reduce the signaling pathway for muscle growth, right? It blunts the stress too early before your body even senses it and has a chance to adapt to it. So if you're trying to build muscle and then hopping right into a 10-minute cold plunge, that's probably not helping your gains at all, right? Timing matters. I usually recommend waiting a few hours, or better yet, plunging on rest days or after maybe like aerobic-based training, like zone 2 conditioning or something like that. If we're trying to add a stress in order to adapt, then we need the stress in our body to signal that adaptation. Now, the other side of this is sleep. And that's where cold plunges can be a real cheat code, right? Doing a plunge a few hours before bed can actually lower your core body temperature, which is one of the natural signals that your body uses to initiate sleep. When your core temp drops, melatonin inversely gets released and your body starts to transition into sleep mode. So for former athletes trying to fix a broken sleep schedule or trying to even get back on track with, deep restorative sleep, cold exposure in the evenings can actually be really a cheat code once again. But again, I'm not talking about maybe Wim Hof breathing at midnight or jumping into a frozen lake or anything like that. I'm talking taking a 2 to 3 minute plunge, maybe 2 hours before bed. Now you follow that with some magnesium and a wind down routine and maybe some blue light blocking glasses and getting the hell off of your devices. We will be great, right? So let's talk about the psychological benefits of cold plunging. Right? The part that doesn't get talked about enough, right? You see that former athletes often miss that feeling of being in it, right? The zone, the tension, the pressure, the cold. Plunges recreate that microdose of chaos. So it forces you into the present moment. It tests your discipline. And honestly, it gives you a win to really start or end the day. It's a controllable adversity. It's one of those things that those that are trying to rebuild their identity after their sporting, career is exhausted. That's a real easy thing to be able to do, is to leverage a cold plunge in doing so. So one of the most powerful things about plunging, at least in my experience, coaching athletes and former athletes, is that it rebuilds the trust in yourself, that you can do hard things, that you can show up, breathe through discomfort, and not back down when your brain is screaming at you and telling you to quit. It's that same mental toughness that you had back in the day. It's just repackaged a little bit different for your current lifestyle. So getting into the practical weeds of things, not everybody has a $10,000 budget to build a cold plunge in their backyard. And you don't need one. Start with cold showers, right? Seriously, I'm just a cold shower. And that works. Try ending your normal shower with 60 seconds of full cold, and gradually increase that 60 seconds duration over a few weeks. Maybe you buy a few bags of ice, right? You toss them into your bathtub if you have one, and control the environment manually. If you're serious about consistency, consider maybe like a trough style setup, like what they feed cows and horses with, right? Simple, it's effective, and way more budget friendly than these luxury, beautiful cold tubs. And then lastly, I just want to touch on this, right? There are probably some times and people that maybe should avoid plunges, or at least proceed with caution, right? If you have issues with cardiovascular disease or different sort of syndromes or unmanaged blood pressure, this is something you need to speak with your doctor about. So cold exposure is a powerful stimulus, but it's not for everyone. So number one, safety first, ego second, and then remember this, right? I'm not a doctor. I don't pretend to be one. I don't play one on the internet. So consult with your primary care physician. So wrapping this up, are cold plunges overrated? I don't think so. I think if they're used with intentionality, they're pretty cool. They're not a silver bullet for things. They're not a substitute for proper training or good nutrition or solid sleep, but they are an incredible tool. And especially for us, right? Former athlete populations who are trying to maybe reconnect with that discomfort and rebuild discipline and create structure. They give you a really hard reset, a physicality and a mentality. And sometimes that's exactly what we need. So hopefully that answers the question as far as cold tubs. Now I do need to look down at my screen and try to find the next question that was emailed in. So give me 1 second. Of course, my screen's getting a little bit crazy. I am loading this up. Perfect. Okay, so second question I got, and this one comes from Chicago. Awesome, I love Chicago. Adam, I've always done conventional barbell deadlifts since college, but I keep seeing people use the trap bar in my gym. Is one better than the other, or do they serve different purposes? And that's a great, listen, this is an awesome question. And it's one that I think a lot of former athletes wrestle with once they're out of that sort of structured environment of college sports. Because here's the deal. When you were in college, whether you were a volleyball athlete, basketball athlete, football, probably doesn't matter, right? You probably had a coach, somebody like me, who picked one style of programming or something like that and programmed it consistently. Maybe they were always the trap bar. Maybe it was always the barbell. Maybe it was the old school iron sharpens irons crew. And everything was done with that straight bar, right? Grip it and rip it and let it rock, right? But now you have to be your own coach. So how do you choose, right? So let's kind of maybe unpack that, right? Let me start by saying this, is that both options are phenomenal options. I'm not here to demonize anything. So the question isn't really which one is better universally. It's just what is better for you right now based on your goals, your body, your injury history, and how you want to move, right? Let's look at maybe the biomechanics first, because understanding how each version loads your system helps you make a smarter decision when it comes to programming your exercises in your weight room or gym workouts. In a conventional deadlift, you're using a straight barbell and your hands are typically outside of your knees. You're pulling the bar from the floor and it's tracking directly under your midfoot. Now your hips are generally a little bit higher. Your torso is inclined a little bit more. And the lift emphasizes a posterior chain, right? Especially things like your hamstrings, your spinal erectors, your lats. And there's a massive hinge component. And depending on how mobile or maybe tight your hips are, it can be a pretty demanding exercise on the lumbar spine if not executed correctly and cleanly. So let's contrast that with the trap bar deadlift, right? Or a hex bar deadlift. They're kind of used synonymous, similarly, right? With this version, your hands are in a neutral position. It's aligned right in your body's center of mass, and your feet are inside the bar. So the shape of the bar typically allows you to maintain a more upright torso, and your hips sit a little lower, and your knees are probably a little bit more forward than your conventional deadlift. So there's more quad involvement in the trap bar deadlift. You still get some glute activation, and the hinges mechanics are still there, but it's a little bit more squatty, if you will. And it feels like a sort of squat deadlift hybrid, to be honest. So why does this matter, right? If you're dealing with some lingering back tightness, or you've had, disc issues in the past, we're a little bit older athlete population, right? Maybe the trap bar is usually the more forgiving option for you because it ends up reducing some shear forces on the lumbar spine, right? It lets you stay a little bit taller. It's easier to cue proper form with or without a coach. And it's just kind of a plain safer movement for a lot of our general population folks and former athletes who may be entering into the training world after some time off or with a body that has a little bit more mileage on their vehicle, on their chassis, right? From a loading perspective, most people can actually lift more weight on the trap bar. And that's not a bad thing, right? That's kind of cool. More weight moved with good form often equals more mechanical tension. And that means that there's greater strength gains over time. Now, if your goal is to build foundational strength again, to reestablish some confidence under heavy load, the trap bar can really be a huge bang for your buck type of movement without as steep of a technical learning curve in the process. Now, this is kind of a big task, I guess, to discuss, but the conventional deadlifts still absolutely have a place in training, right? Especially if you're chasing posterior chain, hamstring, glutes, things like that. Raw power off the floor. And if you're prepping for a sport or a competition that specifically requires that pattern, then yeah, you probably should do it. So let's say you're getting back into CrossFit, or you're someone who's maybe eyeing a powerlifting meet, just for fun, like for old time's sake, or even more tactically. You're in a phase where you're trying to bring up your hamstring strength, your spinal stiffness, grip, endurance, something like that. That's where conventional deadlift styles really shine. It's raw. Listen, it's unforgiving. The bar doesn't lie. It builds insane amount of strength through that posterior chain. And it teaches how to brace, how to hinge, and how to control the bar in space. So maybe a personal story. There was a time, I would think maybe 5 years ago for me, when I was hammering conventional deadlifts every single week. I loved it, right? I felt strong. I was dialed in. I was confident, all those things. But you know what? Life changes. I got busier. I wasn't sleeping as well. I noticed for me that my post-lift fatigue was lingering longer than it ever should. And my back was aching. My hamstrings always felt tight. So I made a switch from my conventional grip deadlift to trap bar deadlift, at least for a training cycle. And honestly, the quality of my lifts improved. My recovery shot back up. I kind of look forward to training that deadlift movement again, that hinge movement. The trade-off was absolutely worth it for me, right? And here's a tactical nugget just to think about. Don't think of this as a binary choice, off or on, right? You can use both in a training cycle. One of my favorite setups is to cycle the trap bar deadlifts during phases when we're pushing volume, and then cycle in a conventional deadlift during intensity blocks or lower volume strength phases. That way you're never abandoning one lift or one movement. You're strategically using both based on your goals. And also, maybe a tip out there just for some people as I kind of run off my head here. If you're considering using a trap bar, look into the trap bar jumps, right? If you got a trap bar with open handles and decent flooring, adding velocity work like a loaded trap bar jump, 30, 40% of your max, can really reintroduce that power output stimulus that, especially as you're an older athlete, you tend to lose. So it's such a great way for us to stay athletic without needing a barbell across your back or doing cleans or snatches when we're a little bit older and our joints are, less forgiving, if you will. So if the conventional bar maybe intimidates you right now, that's okay, right? Training is supposed to build confidence, not to create dread. If you're walking into the gym already sore or stiff or stressed from work or parenting, and then the lift on deck is a heavy deadlift, right? From barbell, like a barbell deadlift from the floor or whatever. Sometimes, quite frankly, that is just way too much friction, right? The trap bar removes a lot of that, and it's a way more approachable for us, right? And when you win the warm-up and you win the setup and you feel good throughout the reps, you stack those wins on top of each other. You want to come back. You want to go back to the gym. And that is the whole point of training. So to answer the question, neither one is better, but they are definitely different. So choose the tool that fits your current situation. Don't be dogmatic about it, right? Be adaptable. That's the new athleticism. So great question, as always. Appreciate you sending that in. Okay, next question. I'm going to jump ahead here. Hey, coach, I've been training at home for a while, and I am thinking about joining a commercial gym. There are a few options near me. Do you have any recommendations for what kind of gym former athletes should look like? This guy's 33, is former D2 swimmer. All right, Mason. Okay, all right, Mason. That's a phenomenal question. I'm thinking about it. Honestly, I get this a lot, right? Especially from athletes that want that same sort of like competitive environment, right? The commercial gym landscape, quite frankly, can be a little overwhelming, especially if you haven't been in that scene since maybe your college days. So you're not alone in wondering whether or not you should join one gym or the other, right? But here's what I'll say up front. Your environment, your gym should match your goals and your environment preferences, because it's not just about the equipment in the gym, it's about sustainability. So the chase, or sorry, the space, the equipment, the place that you choose has to feel like a place where you want to show up every day. If it doesn't feel right to you, or the vibe's off, or the people aren't walking in a common step of what you want to accomplish, then you'll find excuses not to go. And that's just human nature. So when I talk about former athletes, you got a certain background and it's different, right? You're used to training with intent. You're used to having some structure. You're probably a little bit more self-aware in the weight room than the average gym goer. So your needs are going to be a bit different, right? Than somebody who's just starting out in the gym and has no idea what to do. So I usually break it down in this way. If your main focus is just lifting and building strength and maybe getting back some of the muscularity that you've had during your competitive years, that old school, maybe bodybuilding style gym might be the ticket for you, right? They often have dumbbells, they go heavy, specialty bars, leg presses, hack squats, right? Reverse hypers, all the good stuff that you could honestly, maybe need or maybe want and that you can't find in a commercial gym. But those places can feel sometimes, quite frankly, bro-y, right? They can have a certain ego to them and energy to them. So if you prefer a more quieter session or more privacy, then that might not be your thing. On the flip side, those big chain sort of gyms like your 24-hour fitness or your Planet Fitness, you'll get access to basic equipment and longer operations or operating hours, but they'll often lack maybe the serious training environment that you once knew. And if you're okay working out around general fitness pop people, cool. You just need a treadmill and you need some machines and squat rack here or there. That is totally workable. But they're also great if you travel a lot, right? Like I do. Sometimes it's nice knowing I can go from one city to another city and know that I can just jump into their gyms because they are a commercial chain, right? So these are maybe some of the things I'm thinking about. I just think, if it really is situationally dependent, right, on your style of training, right? Also, I just think about the logistics of training, and people often overlook that, but it can be really a make or break factor. How far is it? Do you got to drive 40 minutes? Do you got to drive an hour? Do you got to drive 20 minutes? Is the energy in the room, at the same time that you would normally go? So is there a crowd at 5 p.m. that's different than a 9 a.m. crowd or an 8 a.m. crowd? Right? All of those things. If is the parking crowded? Is it busy during the lunch hour rush and you can't even get on the equipment? All of those things probably need to be observed prior to making a decision about whether or not you want to join that gym versus another, right? So great question. As always, I appreciate that one you send in. I'm going to tackle one more question. This is a super long video. I'm kind of diving into the weeds. I got some time for it. Question, let's see, Jason. Okay. Hey, Adam, I'm hearing more and more about people talking and taking creatine. It's not just for muscle growth, but for overall health. Yes, we'll get into that. Do you think it's something former athletes like me should take? I'm not really training like I used to. Well, listen, Jason, we got to fix that. That's number one. But I still want to be healthy and sharp. So listen, I love creatine. I'll make no excuses about it, right? I love creatine. And I think it is, it's the most well-researched supplement in the world, the entire health and fitness world. And quite frankly, it's not just for meatheads that's trying to add 15 pounds of muscle to their body. It is literally one of the rare supplements out there that's got legitimate science to it. And it check marks a lot of different boxes for strength, for power, for cognition, for recovery, for long-term health, for just general health. So let me start here, right? Creatine if creatine had just come out today and people were hearing about it for the very first time, right? That it could improve your brain function, support your muscle mass, that it could speed up recovery and potentially protect against maybe neurological decline. I probably would be sold at 4 times the price, right? It would be, right? It'd be like treated as this miracle discovery, right? It'd be touted as the next best thing in the world. But because it's been around forever and most people associate it with 19-year-old football players loading it with grape Gatorade, that was me back when I was playing football in high school, it tends to get overlooked, right? And that's a shame because if you're a former athlete who's not trying like you used to be, but still cares about long-term performance and energy and clarity of mental acuity, and creatine's absolutely worth considering. So let me break it down, right? Creatine is a natural occurring compound found in muscle tissue. and it's synthesized by your liver and your kidneys. Your body uses it rapidly to regenerate ATP, right? Which is the body's energy currency, especially during like short explosive efforts, things like that, right? Sprinting, lifting, jumping, etc., right? Basically all the stuff you probably used to do more of during your playing days. Now, this is where it gets a little interesting for former athletes, right? Once you're no longer lifting 5 days a week and you're not eating 5,000 calories like you maybe did back in your playing days, right? You're not sprinting regularly. Your body's own creatine source can drop. And that might not be noticeable immediately, but over time, that slight energy dip, both physically and mentally, starts to show up, right? And that's where the supplementation comes in, right? Adding in 3 to 5 grams of creatine monohydrate per day, just the basic stuff. It's not even the fancy versions. You can get all sorts of crazy creatine products out there. That alone can help saturate your muscle stores and improve how quickly you regenerate energy. But again, it's not just about the weight room. It's not about what I love, the weight room that I work in. There's some really cool research emerging around creatine and brain health. Things like its ability to support working memory or cognitive endurance and potentially reduce mental fatigue. And now this matters for former athletes who might be sitting at a desk, right, pushing reports more than they used to, right? But they still want to feel sharp and dialed in. And honestly, for those of you who's had maybe multiple concussions in your playing days or head trauma, right, during your athletic career, the neuroprotective benefits of creatine could especially be relevant in those cases, right? Some studies have even looked at creatine supplementation in populations dealing with traumatic brain injuries. Think about it, traumatic brain injuries and concussions, specifically around neurodegenerative disorders. Now, we're not talking magic, but enough to make me think that it's more than worth a spot in your daily supplement stack, right? So that's great. It's cheap. It has a tremendous amount of different benefits. You can find high quality NSF certified creatine monohydrate like the ones from Thorne or from Clean Athlete for under $40. And it'll last you a couple months. And there's no need to cycle it in or cycle it off. You just really just load it up, toss it in your morning coffee, smoothie, protein shake, Gatorade, whatever it might be, and move on, right? One quick heads up though. It may cause a little initial water retention, especially intracellular in the muscle. And that's not bloating, right? It's actually a sign that the creatine's working. It's helping you retain some water in the muscle cell itself, which can, ergo, help support hydration in your performance. So if you're still lifting a few times a week, creatine will definitely support your strength. It will help your recovery between sessions. But even if you're not training as hard as you once did, it's still a really smart play for muscle retention, brain health, and aging. That, I think, is going to be it for today's Q&A session. This went way longer than normal. Where are we at? 31 minutes. There is a couple things I want to say. Number one, if you made it this far, this is our Instagram right there. You can find me, adamringler.com or at Adam Ringler. I'm on Instagram. I'm on all the social medias. Drop me a message. I'm going to share all of these videos or the Q&A calls on the socials anyways. Comment. Let me know what you thought of this video. Now, that said, I am, I'm on YouTube. You're watching this probably via YouTube, number one. And I'm looking at our YouTube analytics, our numbers. I would love for you to like, subscribe, hit the notifications. I need you to be a part of our community. We are building this out on YouTube, on the Former Athlete Society. And you can find more information about the Former Athlete Society right here at the website. Go to adamringler.com. There's a link at the very top of the page. It's inviting you to join the Former Athlete Society. From there, you can subscribe. You can get a full backlog catalog of all of our Q&A calls, all of our accountability calls, all of our master classes. Get access to the Former Athlete Society training program. I am rewarding you guys with a bunch of different content, but also free programming on top of it, leveraging the 20 years of my livelihood of being a strength conditioning coach, serving this population, and I want to help you out. So again, just pop by to any of the socials, but definitely stop by adamringler.com and become a member. That's going to be it, everybody. I appreciate you for tuning in to this long Q&A, and I will see everyone next time. I appreciate you.